Hey folks, today I want to talk to you about micro machines because I want a full line of micro machines decoed as G1 Transformers. And this 2022 Optimus Prime playset kind of inspired the idea. And I thought at the time it would portend a full line to follow, but that never came. Hasbro acquired Galoob back in 1998, and the only real connections with Micro Machines and Transformers were the Titanium series, which was very interesting, but not really that classic Micro Machines format. And then there's been a lot of movie Baver stuff, but just not G1. And what I really loved about this playset, this Optimus Prime playset, wasn't the Optimus part. It was that it came with this little blue C3 Corvette decoed as tracks with just beautiful blue paint, this beautiful hood sticker emblem, just like the original G1 toy. And it even came with a gimmick underneath that if you flipped it over, there's an Autobot symbol that you could only see clearly if you use this equivalent of a tech spec decoder. So not necessary, but it was a nice touch. And I've always liked the Micro Machines kind of dumpy proportions, and I thought they would look good as G1 Transformers. So that's what we're going to look at today. I've actually whipped up 10 concepts based on my own childhood Micro Machines. I found a Ziploc bag full of them, and I pulled out 10 of them that looked like they could, generally resemble G1 models, and I've decoed them as their G1 characters. And later in the video, I'll explain how I did that, but I'll give you a hint. It was not a natural process, but it was really fun. There were some hits, there are some misses. We'll go through them together. And I think that if Hasbro did a full line like this, it would be really popular among fans, such as myself. So let's kick things off with a Lamborghini Countach. Seems like a good place to start for Transformers. And again, this is one of my childhood toys. I just took a picture of it, and I thought he would be a great Sideswipe. And sure enough, he is. I love the red. I love the black accents. I think the Autobot sticker on the hood or the chest is a really important part of a Sideswipe's look. We're missing that little black triangle on the door, but aside from that, the black accents came out really well. I think they're also, part of what makes Sideswipe look the way he looks. So here's a side by side, and yeah, I'd call this an 8 out of 10. I love it. I mean, I think this thing this thing to me kind of proves the concept. I think this is perfect. I would love to have one of these in my pocket. So let's stick with the Lamborghini train of thought for a moment. And this is another one that I pulled out of my Ziploc bag, and this is called the Deluxe series. So this is where the doors opened and the hood and the trunk also opened. And this, this kind of gold paint job, which is super luxurious and flashy, definitely had my mind going in the direction of Sunstreaker. And I think Sunstreaker comes across pretty well too. Might give this one more like a 6 out of 10. I didn't change those chrome intakes that go on top of the rear engine. I didn't want to mess with the mold at all and really focus just on redeco. Just, it's an artificial constraint in my imagination of what it would take for Hasbro to do something like this, and what might be a showstopper. And retooling these old molds might be a showstopper. So that's why I just avoided that. But I think the chrome spoiler really sells it. That totally looks like Sunstreaker, obviously the yellow paint. And I love this little red splash of paint on the rear quarter panel that evokes the red stickers that went on the shoulders of the G1 toy, which were themselves like a incidental carryover from the Diaclone sticker sheet, as I understand it. So there was a red Diaclone Sunstreaker that had this red sticker, and it never got updated when they decided to change it to be a yellow Lamborghini in the Transformers line. So I really like it. I think as a companion repaint to the Sideswipe one, it makes sense. But because it doesn't have some of the unique features of Sunstreaker, I'll just call it a 6 out of 10. Now we're going to try an experiment, and this looks like a Chevy Blazer, maybe some kind of an SUV, Bronco, Jeep. Um, and this was from an interesting subline called the Insiders, where the Micro Machine, which was still a normal sort of Micro Machine scale, maybe a touch bigger, would open up like a clamshell, and inside was a super, super tiny Micro Machine, even smaller than Micro Machines. They called them Micro Minis. And this one has a Ferrari Mondial inside of it with pretty good detail, too. It's got painted headlights, that kind of thing. And when I looked at this SUV, I thought, well, that could be Brawn. I actually don't know what Brawn's make and model was originally supposed to be, but with the repaint, it looks okay. Those little bits of orange peeking out the front grille, maybe those are tow hooks. I think that helps sell it. Certainly the paint, is important. I think the shade is off a little bit, but it's not a big deal. The biggest factor is that spare tire on the roof. Um, I couldn't make it work without the spare tire, so I broke my rule about no remolds. For this one, it's the only way it would work. But with the spare tire, I think it actually is pretty convincing. It's a passable Brawn. I'd give it maybe a 4 out of 10. Now we're going to head up market with some German luxury, and we've got a Porsche 928. This is their, front end touring car that was going to expand the line beyond the 911. And this is actually one of my dream cars from the 80s, in particular from the movie Weird Science. That one really that one really planted this car in my mind. And it was in a bunch of other movies too. It's not just that one. But to this day, I've never actually driven one. I don't know what it's like. I've heard you shouldn't meet your heroes when it comes to the 928, that it's not actually a great drive, but I don't know. I'd love to find out for myself. And when you look at a 928, there's only one car it can be when it comes to G1 Transformers, and that's dead end from the Stunticons. You got to have a dead end. And I think this came out awesome, actually. I'm really happy with this. The kind of maroon color is perfect. The dumpy proportions are perfect. I love that little fat 928. And the stripe across the hood, it's offset. It's got that yellow and gray, two-tone thing. It's perfect. It looks so much like Dead End. So I'm really happy with this one. I think I'll give this a 9 out of 10. It's hard to say how this could be any better. So next up, we've got what I think is a Pontiac Firebird Trans Am, and being that he's red, he could only become Windcharger. And there were more than one Trans Am in the G1 lineup, but Windcharger is the red one. And it takes a little bit of work here to make him look right. For one thing, both the Micro Machine and Windcharger are pretty weird looking Trans Ams. Like in my mind, I always imagine something more like Knight Rider, like really sleek and a pointy hood. But these toys are really stumpy, right? They've got these flat fronts that remind me more of a Camaro or a Charger or something like that. Those T-top glass panels on the top, I think, help sell that it's Windcharger. The louvres on the back, those sort of slats that go on the back window, I think that helps too. So I also broke the no remolds rule here. But the front to me just kind of doesn't look right. So unfortunately, I think I'd probably give this one a 2 out of 10. He's red, there's black. It's enough to tell that it's supposed to be Windcharger, but it's just not really triggering that Windcharger memory circuit in my brain. So next up, we've got a tank. And this is another one of those insiders toys where it clamshells open, and what you find inside is this ultra mini micro machine. In this case, it's a 1963 Ford Thunderbird, at least according to my research. And I think it's pretty cool. I don't know the connection between the Thunderbird and a tank, but they're both pink, and it really does have a lot of detail. But getting back to the tank, when you think of G1 Transformers, there's several directions you could go here. Certainly, Warpath is one, Blitzwing is another, Brawl from the Combaticons is another good candidate. And in this case, I was really feeling Warpath. I think the treads help sell it. That little splash of gray in the back is a nice touch because the original toy had that as well as part of the transformation. And then just generally that maroon color scheme. It all comes together and it's very clear that it's Warpath, even though the proportions are a little bit off. So overall, I like this one. I think it does the job and it'll look good on any of the tank characters, even though it's not quite perfect. So I think I'll give it a 5 out of 10. And now we've got a construction vehicle, and there were several of them that I found in the bag. We're just going to look at this one today. And being that he's a cement mixer, of course, he's got to be Mixmaster, right? We got to give that a try. And that was a miss. That didn't work at all. He just doesn't look right. He's not that cab over engine configuration that was Mixmaster. So this just doesn't look like him. Now, the green deco, the purple, immediately evokes Constructicon. You could do that on any car. You could probably do that on a Lamborghini and it would look like a Constructicon. But what it doesn't look like is Mixmaster. So, we tried the barrel originally. I tried it with the green because the actual Mixmaster toy has a green barrel, if that's what you call it, or tumbler. But it just wasn't coming across. So I tried it with this purple and it's still just not getting there. It's just not Mixmaster. So worth a try. Definitely achieves some kind of Constructicon effect, just not the right character. So for that reason, I got to give it a 1 out of 10. And we've got just a few more. And here is an off-road pickup truck that immediately made me think of a specific G1 character, even though it might be the wrong make and model of truck. Like this might be a Nissan. I don't know if it's Toyota. But the character in question is a Toyota Hilux, and it's Hoist. And I think this is a bullseye right here. I love this representation of Hoist, even though he's not a tow truck, right? He doesn't have the whole tow truck attachment. The green, the orange, the yellow and black stripe on the side, like all of that stuff is just screaming Hoist. I think this one nails it. I would love to have this on my desk. So I would call this one probably a 9 out of 10. Here's an F-15 fighter jet. At least that's what I think it is. And who's the most legendary F-15 in all of G1 Transformers? Well, that is definitely going to be Starscream. And I think this comes across pretty well too. The red, sort of pinstriping along his larger wings helps a lot. The blue nose cone. Nose cone's been a little bit elongated, as well as the vertical tail fins to just add those little points that are on his G1 toy. The frosted, smoked sort of canopy, I think, also helps. Those are all really indicative of what made G1 Starscream look the way he looked. But you still have these sort of childish, dumpy proportions, which I really enjoy. Even that front landing gear still being like sloppily applied paint on plastic. I think that all helps sell it as a micro machine version of Starscream. So I like this. I think I would give this somewhere in the neighborhood of a 7 out of 10. And last one for today is a Formula One race car. And of course, we've got to give it the Mirage treatment. I think the front and rear chrome spoilers really help to sell this. Obviously, the sponsor lettering on the side, those evoke Mirage. But I love the colors, just the blue. I think it matches. The red and white pinstriping matches. Even having that little driver in there, that doesn't really evoke the Transformers Mirage, but the Diaclone driver would have gone there. So I think from that point of view, you can call it a match. So this one I think is really successful. When you look at the G1 Mirage, he's quite a bit wider than this, so the proportions, are a little bit off. But the deco is so tight that I think this one really nails it too. This one and some of the other strong showings from today, like Sideswipe, Hoist, Dead End. I mean, could you imagine those being on your desk? I think they would just look awesome. So this one I'll give a 8 out of 10. And here's the complete collection of today's 10 concepts. And I really enjoyed doing this. I mean, this was super fun. Even though some of them are misses, some of them were hits. And I'd be curious to hear your opinions on which ones were which, and what you thought about my little off the cuff scoring system. Definitely Sideswipe and Hoist. Those really are sticking with me as just some really awesome renditions of those characters. Dead End is really good. Starscream is good. Mirage is good. And then, Windcharger, Mixmaster, those are pretty rough. Those are atrocities. Warpath, I think I'm on the fence about Warpath. I really like how it came out, even though I know it's not really quite right. So I'll explain to you a bit of how I did this. It's it's AI, right? It's obviously AI. I actually just had this idea and started talking with Gemini. This is free Gemini. I'm logged into it. And I'll tell you, Gemini did a horrible job. It was really inconsistent. It was what you would call slop, right? Like AI slop. And I have my opinions about AI slop. I get annoyed by it just like a lot of people do. I really used it as a substitute for Photoshop, because I just don't really have those skills. I couldn't get things working with Gemini. So I switched over to this Openclaw agent that I created for myself. I use it in a variety of ways. And it's on Claude as its brain, Claude Sonnet, actually. And it's really well trained. I use it for certain repetitive tasks, and this thing follows instructions a lot better. It's much more consistent. So I switched over to that, even though it was going to burn API tokens, cost me a little bit of money, very small amount of money. And it did a fantastic job. Like, it was much more consistent. All those original photos, by the way, are in-camera photos. Those the background, that white poster board is just real. That is the real white poster board that I do these videos on. It was able to really consistently keep the shape of the toy intact while just adjusting the deco, the color, the stickers. Whereas when I tried it with Gemini, it kept recreating it, like regenerating it from scratch, and you'd get these weird shapes. It would totally change the toy to where it wasn't the toy anymore. So It's only when you try those kind of projects side by side you start to see the difference between the different models. And I'm not a power user of AI, but I am kind of an enthusiast. I have reasons why I need to make use of it. So that's what I did here. Turned out to be really fun and engaging for me. It gave me an excuse to look up, what some of these Micro Machines car models were, which I couldn't tell just by looking, right? I mean, I could pick out a Lamborghini Countach, but that Nissan truck, I didn't know that. Or the Chevy Trailblazer, right? I didn't know that off the top of my head. So those were fun little wells to dive into. And if I can find some more micro machines that would serve as fitting subjects for G1 Transformers, maybe we'll do this again. As you can tell, I really enjoyed this little exploration. I hope you enjoyed it too. We have a lot of videos on the channel that cover history and trivia and little engineering design quirks, repair techniques, and some of these side quests like we did today. Say hi in the comments. Let me know what you thought of my ratings of the output. As always, I hope you found this information useful, and we'll see you next time.